now we have a bit of breaking news here at ESPN Esports, and Jacob Wolf is joining me right now to break it all down. It is regarding SK Gaming and their recent promoting of a jungler as well as their current jungler trick. So, Jacob, why don't you just launch into what the situation is and what's been going on behind the scenes?
So Trick, who has been the starting jungler for SK Gaming this entire season, will not be eligible for the 2020 League of Legends World Championship in Shanghai in the event that SK Gaming makes it through the European League of Legends European Championship playoffs. They obviously begin play on Friday against Schalke 04, who is their first opponent in the lower bracket. And should they make it, Trick will be ineligible because during this process in mid-July, Riot reached out to all the teams in the League European Championship for player passport information to begin the early stages of vetting for Chinese visas. Through that process, they noticed that Trick's passport expires within the next 6 months. And to be eligible for a visa to go to China, you have to have a passport that has 6 months or more left on its term. Because he does not, he will not be able to get it renewed in time to make this amend. There's additional scrutiny, and this is what makes this World Championship so interesting. Emily, I know you've done some reporting around this also. There's a lot of scrutiny right now on getting a visa to China because of COVID-19, particularly for Westerners or people competing. And Trick is obviously South Korean, but has lived in Europe the majority of the year. Has previously been there before on other teams such as Schalke and G2. So for people who live in Europe or the United States or Canada, it's very difficult to go to some of the Eastern countries right now because of how bad things have been in the West with COVID-19. So Riot's taken these additional precautions. These deadlines are not particularly flexible, maybe in the way that they had been in the past. And so if SK makes it, Trick will not be going with them, and instead they will be using Kaney, who they signed last week on August 4th. He is a German European Regional League jungler who will be promoted. And instead of playing his first professional match on the LEC stage, he may be playing his first professional match on the World Championship stage. Shall they make it?
So I think my first comment is, despite the fact that, like you said, I've been doing a lot of reporting around the coronavirus when it actually first hit China because the LPL was the first league to be affected. However, I do have to point out here that we knew that Worlds was going to be in China last year. Like it was confirmed, like finals in Shanghai. We already knew it was going to be in China. We were expecting it to be a Chinese tour, and now obviously, due to the pandemic, it's only going to be in Shanghai specifically. But how much of this is, like you said, a tightening of like visa processes, and how much of this is we really should have known because already Chinese visas can be very tricky to navigate for Western players?
Yeah, I mean, this is a huge oversight by SK. I reached out to both their CEO, Alex Miller, and their GM, Interflame, Joel Lossi, who neither of them responded to me for a comment back on this. I reached out to Riot also and did not get a comment back, but this is massive. But from both them and from Trick, I think that Trick has been in this scene long enough to know that this is something that should be relatively important for him to have. Is a passport that is not it is current, which will allow him to play through the remainder of the LEC playoffs if he so chooses to. But the bigger part is, he's been on a visa in Europe for many, many years and many different stints. So this is not a first for him. It's not like this is his first rodeo of like applying for one of these things. So he should very much be on top of it, as should his team. The fact that no one thought about this is kind of flabbergasting. This is like SK's big summer. This is the one time this team has done something since they got back in League of Legends. They were an underperforming team their first split in LEC. They have been a fairly good team this split, and throughout the majority of the summer have been top 5. Like if at any point in June or May, if he would have gone to the South Korean embassy in Berlin, he could have gotten this renewed fairly easily, and this wouldn't have been a problem. The fact that no one thought about that at any point either makes me think that they didn't think they had a chance to make Worlds, which obviously they now do, or the fact that like they just don't know what they're doing. And I'm not sure which one it is, but neither are good.
Yeah, I mean, I think so. The big thing for me is I'm thinking about it now personally, and I'm like, would I know if my visa was expiring in 6 months? And the answer is no. And I think like a lot of times we kind of joke about how players don't really focus on anything outside of the game, to the point where sometimes you even ask them what happened within that game itself, and they can only answer about their specific lane or like what they did and stuff. I think that I guess I put a little bit more onus on the team because it is like, in my opinion, up to management to be like, okay, when is this kind of stuff expiring? What do we have to have in place? And obviously the pandemic makes things a lot different. It like you said, it makes deadlines a lot more firm. And the final question I have for you is like, how much do you think this is going to be affecting this world championship? Because from my perspective, I'm wondering, I know we've talked to some players in LCS about whether they would even want to travel, not necessarily about traveling to China, but traveling at all. Like the risk is in the actual flight, not like uh, being in China. And then additionally, like if the visa processes are a lot stricter, we've seen teams have visa issues before. Like I remember Smithy was looking like he was going to have an issue at the 2015 World Championship, I believe, when he was on CLG. We've seen this happen to Western players before. So do you think that the tightened deadlines, the fact that it's all in Shanghai, everything around the pandemic and travel, like how much do you think this is going to affect this year's Worlds?
I think a lot. I would be surprised if he is the last player to have a visa hiccup, especially once we
Same.
understand what LEC and LCS teams actually qualify for the World Championship, right? Like he is a special circumstance because there's a hard deadline on, and this is just like preliminary info, right? Like now once a team qualifies, like Rogue, they are having to go through the full process now because they are guaranteed, and they have to pay the certain amount. Riot has to pay the certain amount of money, etc. So but this is just the like early vetting. There's so many other places for things to go wrong from now until the fact that we know where everyone's qualified in 3 weeks or 2.5 weeks when playoffs are over. Like there's so many hurdles that could go wrong. I'm particularly interested what happens with the American players because actually last week, Nico Laurent, the CEO of Riot, on a call talking about Neom, completely unrelated conversation, did allude to the fact that Riot has to work with government entities, including China, and that is how they are able to get this Worlds done at all. The fact that they have such a
Yeah.
good, thorough relationship with the Chinese government allows for them to be able to make decisions like this. So the fact that I don't think in any other circumstance without those types of relationships any American would be let into China right now anyway, without some really hard pushing and some prior relationships, because COVID-19 is horrible here in the U.S. and particularly in LA where many of these players are residents. So to me, like, I would not be stunned if any of the North American players making that journey at the end of September or mid-September have same issues. Like we're talking about a month from now when these people are going to up and go, right? Like this is
Yeah.
for them, like World starts on September the 25th. A lot of people are going to start leaving to go there to be able to be quarantined from in early to mid-September. We're talking about a month here. That's a lot of expediting processing, and like there's a lot of hurdles that it could has to jump. And I wouldn't be surprised if we hit some of them for certain players. So I don't think Trick is the last, and I think that visas are going to be a much more of a discussion for this World Championship than prior because of COVID.
So let that be a lesson to esports teams. You should probably assume that you're making it to Worlds, regardless of how ridiculous it seems, and start the process to get visas for all of your players because it's going to be very difficult. Jacob, thank you so much for bringing this news to our attention. I'm sure we'll be discussing more about the World Championship and visa issues going forward. And for more League of Legends coverage, keep it here on ESPN Esports.